Today we're looking at the Wilco Airbus A320 for Flight Simulator X. I picked this up in a second-hand store for £6 and I want to see how it compares to modern flight sim add-ons. It does support cold and dark starts, so we're going to run through a full flight here. Turn the batteries and your fuel pumps on. We don't need the cross feed here. Turn on the generators, external power, and we'll start the APU. We'll also make sure the seatbelt signs are on and turn the strobe lights on. With that done, we can head down to the FMC and we can enter our flight plan. So we're using the default nav data, so it might be slightly out of date, but we're going from Stansted to Inverness, which is a nice long flight which should allow us to get up to a decent altitude. Line the IRS, set a flight number, set a cruising altitude, which Flight Sim recommended 26,000. Put in our 0 fuel weight CG, 0 fuel weight, block fuel. We're going to pick a departure. We're on runway 05, pick a SID, no transition. We're also going to insert a waypoint here along the way, just to see how it handles that. So we'll go via Trent. You can plan your flights in the FSX flight planner also. Although it doesn't automatically get added to the FMC, you still need to put that in manually. And you can see there we have a full flight plan with a limit of 250 below 10,000, a top of climb, a top of descent, and a deceleration waypoint. So that is all set. With that done, we'll do some perf stuff. So we're going flaps 1 and basically no trim for takeoff, just for demonstration purposes. Flex to 40. I'm going to put in the V speeds here, which it gives you when you click on the soft keys. Transition altitude of 5,000. With that done, we'll go back up to the overhead panel, turn on the APU bleed, and we will turn off the external power. We'll try and start the engine. So go down to the pedestal, we'll just flick the radios on while we're here. Everything else is good. TARA on the squawk panel, weather radar is on. I'm not sure but it works. Engines to ignition and engine to start. While we're here, we'll also arm the spoilers and set flaps for takeoff. So we now have a good start on engine number 2. Now repeat the process for engine number 1. So just flick on the starter, and before you know it, we'll have a good start on engine number 1. Just to say, this does have a proper 3D cockpit, but I'm using the 2D panels just because it's really almost impossible to set preset views in the default sim here, so it's easier to use the 2D panels for most things, and both engines have now started. With engine started, we're almost ready for flight. Just head up to the pedestal, engine starter back to normal, up to the overhead panel. We can now turn off APU bleed and the APU, quick check of everything else, and everything looks good. So we've got our takeoff checklist here. We'll just make sure that our auto brake is set to medium, and we can test the takeoff config by pressing the button on the pedestal or in the 3D cockpit. It's now time to bring these throttles to flex and start our takeoff roll. We hit V1 and rotate. The plane actually feels fairly weighty. It's quite nice. The modern stuff, the fly-by-wire and stuff, tends to feel a little bit light. So positive rate, gear up, and autopilot can go on. And we'll put the levers in climb as soon as it asks us to. The plane has no issues following our departure. I'm almost certain that if you updated the nav data, you could comfortably fly this on VATSIM or a similar online network. So as our speed increases here, we're just going to set the flaps to 0. We'll just quickly check in on the FMC to make sure that all is going well, and it is. We've got our plan, we've got our top of climb, and if we look on the ND here, we can see our top of climb is in about 80 miles or so. So as we continue to climb, we pass through 5,000 feet, and we'll set the altimeter to standard. We can also take care of some housekeeping while we climb. So in the FMC we can set our destination ILS. which is 108.50 for Inverness runway 5, and we can also do our approach ref because I've just set like fair weather in the sim, so I know exactly what the weather will be at our destination. The altimeter is 101.3, the temperature is about 14 degrees. Winds are calm, so we'll put like 359 degrees at 0, and we'll set our decision height at 150. The next milestone in our flight is 10,000 feet, so as you can see here, above 10,000 the plane automatically increases its speed to our cruising speed. I think it's about 320 knots. So far I'm really impressed by this old add-on, not only because of the functionality but also because of the reliability. Back in the day you had to make sure your software was actually finished before you shipped it, because you'd be pressing tens of thousands of discs and shipping physical copies to paying customers. You didn't have a chance to make something half-baked and then just patch it out later. So at our top of climb we get the correct altitude cruise annunciator, and what we're also going to do here is set our altitude on the MCP to our final altitude of 2000, just so it's ready for us to activate our descent when we reach our top of descent, which is the next milestone in the flight. So as we pass through top of descent, which is clearly marked here on the ND, we can activate our managed descent, and the plane happily follows it. So it does tend to hunt the descent path a little bit, but honestly it works as intended. As we pass through 10,000 feet here, the plane will slow down to 250 before continuing its descent, and as we hit the deceleration waypoint the plane begins to slow down to our managed approach speed, and we will just apply flaps to suit. As we pass through 5,000 feet here, set the altimeter back to local, and we're also going to press the landing system button to see the ILS displayed on the PFD. So we reach our approach speed just before we turn on to final. Make sure the flaps are full, and our next job will be to activate approach mode. So we'll look across here, hit the approach button, and the plane will continue to follow its plan towards the runway until we intercept the localizer. And of course it will also hold our bottom of descent altitude until the glide slope. So what's kind of bizarre here is the plane actually intercepts the glide slope before the localizer, but as soon as it does grab that glide slope, it turns in to intercept the localizer, and we get the localizer annunciator, and our approach is all good and correctly configured. Once we're in glide slope and localizer, I'm going to activate the second autopilot because this plane does have Autoland. So we're going to try that out here as well and see how it does. I'm now going to keep quiet and let you guys watch the landing.
1,000, 400, 300, 200.
Minimums.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright, there we go, a successful landing and a successful flight in the Wilco A320. I'm going to take in a quick replay after this. We're not going to show the shutdown procedure because it's basically the same as any other Airbus and it works just fine. What we will do after the replay is we'll try out a few more complex bits and pieces to see how deep these systems are. As we watch the replay here, I'll say if you did find this video entertaining or useful, please drop a like, and if you'd like to see more, please do subscribe because I make this kind of content fairly regularly. So once we watch this touchdown, we're going to try out the roll limit protection, we're going to try out the overspeed protection, and we're going to try out the alpha floor protection in the Wilco Airbus A320. These are the kind of features that are present in the more modern Airbus add-ons such as the TOLUS 319 and the fly-by-wire A320nx, so it'll be interesting to see if we did have this kind of feature back in Flight Simulator X. Okay, first up is roll protection. So the Airbus shouldn't let you roll beyond 30 degrees in either direction. So from a stable autopilot flight, we'll pull the stick all the way to the left, and you can see here it does hold me at 30 degrees. So we'll roll the stick back, we'll try it out the other side, and we'll see that, yeah, the Wilco A320 does have a roll limit protection. So there are some things that are more complex that you can't do in this plane. So it doesn't support alternate and direct law because the buttons you need to press to put it into those modes just aren't interactable. So what we'll try out now is the overspeed protection, the idea being that if I push the throttles all the way forward from straight and level flight, the plane should pitch the nose up to correct the overspeed condition. So we'll see if that works. We'll push the throttles all the way to toga. We can see the speed is building and building. So we're now overspeed, and there doesn't really seem to be any effort to pitch the nose up here. The speed is just increasing and the plane is staying level. So we're going to say that overspeed protection doesn't work in this plane. We'll bring these throttles back before we fall out of the sky, and we'll do our final test, which is the alpha floor protection. So the Airbus in normal law shouldn't let you stall. If we push the nose up high enough for the angle of attack to be so high that we induce a stall condition because the speed just drops, the plane should do two things. It should apply full power, and it should also force the nose down to basically just correct that stall condition. And you can see here we've got the toga lock annunciator, the throttles are all the way up here, and it's trying to bring our speed up to a point where we are not just going to stall and fall out of the sky. If we continue to force that nose up, say we go up to about 30 degrees or so, we do get the alpha floor annunciator, and if we release the pressure on the flight stick here, the plane does push the nose down, and it does correct that condition and return us to straight and level flight, where we can reactivate our auto throttle and autopilot. So that concludes our review and tutorial of this old Wilco A320. I'd like to hear what you guys thought about this plane, if you remember it from your early days of flight simming, or if you joined in the modern age and, you know, maybe you're surprised and impressed by what this old plane can do. I can see why people continue to fly Flight Sim X and P3D, even into the X-Plane 11 and MSFS days, because it is just so well made. Until next time, take care, and thank you again for watching.